Ethan Reyes never expected his quiet Tuesday morning to start with confusion. He was halfway through his coffee when the thick white envelope slid out of his mailbox, the kind usually reserved for court summons or expensive wedding invitations. The return label read Sunset Haven Estates Homeowners Association, a name he had never heard in his life. He opened it, expecting some mix-up, but the contents hit harder than the caffeine ever could, a formal notice demanding $356,900 in unpaid HOA dues. At first he laughed, then frowned, then read the letter 3 more times just to make sure he wasn't losing his mind. He didn't own a home in any subdivision. He barely owned furniture. The only real property he had was the 300 acres of rugged desert land his grandfather left him, a place so remote even cell service avoided it. He dug the old deed out of his filing cabinet, the papers still smelling faintly of cedar from his grandfather's wooden box. The land was still his, untouched, unclaimed, unchanged. Nobody lived there. Nobody built anything there. Nobody even visited unless they liked dust storms and sunburns. He told himself it had to be a clerical error, maybe some poorly typed number somewhere, maybe a mix-up with another Ethan. But the letter listed his full name, his correct address, and worst of all, a stern warning that failure to pay could result in collections, liens, and potential legal escalation. That part made his stomach tense. By noon, curiosity had pushed aside irritation. He loaded water, snacks, and his grandfather's old binoculars into his truck. The dirt road leading to his land was the same as always, long, empty, edged with brittle brush. But as he drove, a strange unease crept in, a feeling he couldn't quite explain, like something was waiting for him just beyond the next rise. Ethan expected to find maybe a stray RV, a lost hiker, or at worst, surveyors trespassing again. He did not expect a gated entrance shimmering in the desert heat like some suburban mirage. The metal arch rose above the sand with polished letters spelling Sunset Haven Estates. For a long moment he simply stared, hands locked on the steering wheel, brain struggling to process the impossible sight. Houses, actual houses, stretched across his land in neat rows, each one identical in a way that felt both intentional and unsettling. Beige walls, beige roofs, beige driveways. It looked like someone had copy-pasted the same building 98 times and slapped a bow on it. He rolled forward slowly, and that was when she appeared. A woman in oversized sunglasses marched toward his truck as if she were storming a castle. She had a neon pink clipboard tucked under her arm and a vest that screamed volunteer power trip. Before he even stepped out, she planted herself at his bumper. "You can't park there," she snapped, tapping the clipboard like a weapon. "Residents only beyond this point." Ethan blinked. "I'm the landowner." She snorted. "No. This is an HOA-managed community. Unless you're on the resident roster, you need to turn around." He pulled out the deed, holding it up like a shield. "This says otherwise." She leaned forward, barely glancing at it. "Irrelevant. Our development company secured this land. We've built here fair and square. If you're claiming ownership, you'll need to take it up with the HOA. Meanwhile, you owe dues." "Dues," he repeated, stunned. "Yes," she said, scribbling something on her clipboard with aggressive flourish. "You're already several months behind." He realized she wasn't confused or mistaken, she was absolutely convinced she was in charge. He lifted his phone and started taking photos of everything, the gate, the sidewalks, the endless rows of houses. Karen, as her name tag proudly read, protested loudly, but he ignored her. The county office didn't believe Ethan at first. The clerk actually laughed when he explained that nearly 100 homes had materialized on his land without his knowledge. But when she pulled up the parcel map and overlaid it with recent satellite data, her expression drained of color. Every one of the 98 beige houses sat perfectly, almost artfully, within the boundary lines of Ethan's property. The developer hadn't just encroached. They had swallowed the entire center of his land like a careless child drawing outside the lines. A meeting was arranged with the development company, and Ethan arrived with printed photos, timestamps, and his grandfather's deed. The executives looked confident at first, smoothing their ties and offering strained smiles. But when they compared the maps, the room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The lead developer squinted hard at the screen, then at Ethan, then back at the screen. His face turned the color of week-old oatmeal. This can't be right," he muttered. "It's exactly right," Ethan said. They offered excuses: old maps, surveying errors, miscommunication, but none of it changed the fact that they had built an entire community on land they didn't own. Ethan remained calm, which seemed to unsettle them even more. When he told them they would either need to purchase the land or relocate the houses, several executives started talking at once, their voices cracking under pressure. Then Karen burst into the meeting room like a tornado in high heels. "You cannot negotiate without the HOA president present," she declared, slamming her neon clipboard on the table. The developers visibly shrank. One whispered, "Why is she here?" Another rubbed his temples. Karen planted herself beside Ethan, glaring at him as if he were the intruder. "These homeowners have rights," she snapped. "And this man is trespassing on HOA grounds." Ethan leaned back in his chair, unfazed. "Actually, you're all standing on mine." The moment Ethan announced a press conference, the developers assumed he was bluffing. They whispered among themselves, convinced he would beg for a settlement or quietly cave under legal pressure. Karen, meanwhile, strutted around the neighborhood like a rooster with a clipboard, assuring residents the trespasser would soon be dealt with. None of them expected what Ethan would actually do. On the day of the conference, reporters gathered on the edge of the development, cameras pointed at a small podium Ethan had set up in front of the community's decorative fountain. The homeowners peered from porches and windows, murmuring anxiously. Karen marched toward the crowd, determined to seize the microphone the moment she spotted it. Ethan stepped up first, adjusting the microphone with an ease that made Karen twitch. "Thank you for coming," he began, holding up a stack of documents. "I'm here today to clarify ownership of the land beneath the Sunset Haven Estates community." Cameras clicked. Karen hovered behind him like an angry shadow. Ethan unfolded the deed. "This land belongs to me. Every square foot. This development was built without permission, without permits tied to proper ownership, and without so much as a phone call." A reporter asked, "So what happens now?" Ethan smiled slightly. "What happens now is simple. Since all 98 homes sit on my land, I am formally establishing a new HOA, the Reyes Ranch Preserve Homeowners Association, effective immediately." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen lunged for the microphone, but Ethan held it firmly. "The previous HOA," he continued, "is hereby dissolved. Its rules are void. All residents are released from existing restrictions. And yearly dues will now be $1. A cheer erupted from the homeowners. Even the reporters looked amused. Karen screeched, "You can't fire me. I am the HOA." Ethan calmly turned to her. "Not anymore. You're now trespassing on private land." Security approached. The chaos settled slowly, like dust after a long desert storm. With Karen removed and the old HOA dissolved, Ethan finally had space to breathe and, more importantly, to talk directly with the homeowners without someone waving a clipboard in their faces. He gathered them at the community park one evening, the sun low and orange behind the rows of identical houses. People came carrying lawn chairs, kids, and relieved expressions. They were nervous, but hopeful. Ethan stood on a picnic table so everyone could see him. "I'm not here to take your homes," he said, voice steady. "You didn't know the land wasn't theirs. None of this is your fault." A murmur of gratitude spread through the crowd. One man raised his hand and asked the question everyone feared, "Are we going to lose everything?" Ethan shook his head. "No. But the developers will have to make this right." That reassurance turned the homeowners into a united force. They pressured the developers, attended county meetings, wrote statements, and demanded accountability. With the media still circling the story like hungry vultures, the development company finally cracked. After weeks of negotiations, they agreed to compensate Ethan with a massive settlement. It was enough to cover the land's value, legal fees, and still leave him with life-changing money. In exchange, Ethan signed a long-term ground lease that protected the homeowners and guaranteed stability. When the news broke, cheers echoed through Sunset Haven. Neighbors passed around cupcakes. Someone even decorated their yard with a banner that read "Thanks Ethan." The man who once thought he'd inherited useless desert land was now the community's hero. At their final meeting, the residents unanimously voted to keep Ethan as honorary HOA president, mostly ceremonial, entirely friendly. He accepted the role with a grin. Across the street, Karen attempted to form her own rival HOA, complete with flyers and folding chairs. Only she and her clipboard showed you.